Hello, hello. Wait, which way's the camera? Here. Okay. All right. So hello. Alvina here. I am a licensed therapist, and I own the online counseling platform Mind Be Well. I make videos just that really focus on mental health, self-care, balance, stuff like that. So if you're interested in all of that, please go ahead and you know, do what you do with that follow button. But anyway, so today we are, focusing on faulty thinking. Now, do you ever wake up just already having negative thoughts, either about an upcoming presentation, an upcoming conversation that you're gonna have, or maybe you're just replaying something that happened yesterday? Maybe you did really good and maybe you had a few mistakes. Maybe it was a presentation or just doing something really well, got compliments from people, but it's kind of like you're focusing and ruminating on every little mistake that you made, and you're kind of forgetting some of the awesome things that you did or the positive things that you did. So that right there is a little bit of what we're talking about today with faulty thinking. There's different ways to label faulty thinking, which I will go over, but I think really understanding and really identifying the types of thinking patterns that you have, I think is important, because I think when you start to do that, I think you start to label them in the moment instead of continuing to have them happen and not really putting a label on them. I think being able to do that is helpful in just how you process things. It allows you to take that step back, which I love saying, but it's important. So when your mind convinces you to think thoughts that aren't true, this can be looked at or labeled as faulty thinking. It's also called thinking errors, also automatic negative thoughts. And I don't know if you've ever heard the acronym ANTS, ANTS. That's another way. Or what we call in therapy called cognitive distortions. So I'm about to give you a little bit of history. So if you want to fast forward through this, you by all means do that. So Aaron Beck, who is the founder of cognitive behavior therapy, which is an approach to really manage your thoughts and behaviors, identified ANTs, or automatic negative thoughts, in his depressive patients. And he really discussed something called a cognitive triad, and how these particular, patients thought, sometimes the way they would see themselves, the way they would see the world and the future, it can truly be distorted when you are feeling certain emotions, feeling a certain way. So I think being very mindful of the way that you think, I think is very important. Having these faulty thinking patterns, this can make any unhealthy or uncomfortable thoughts or emotions worse because of these irrational thoughts going on in that head of yours. And as you're believing them, you're moving further away from the rational thinking that you could be having. You're moving further away from being present in the moment. You're moving further away from being able to have that flexibility to attend to things. So, sometimes when you have those negative thoughts, your perspective and, what you're able to focus on, it kind of, dwindles down because you are so focused on that one faulty thought or that thinking pattern. I don't know what this is with my hands, but you know what I mean. Because you haven't fully learned how to manage these faulty thoughts and what they are, I think it is something that will continue to reoccur. Cognitive distortions also are things that, based on our past experiences, the things that have happened to you in your past, if you never fully dealt with those things and the thoughts that popped up in those situations, then any future occurrences or any future situations where it reminds you of a situation from your past, those faulty thinking patterns are going to just pop up and still be there. So I think those are things, it's I feel like it's so important to be mindful of that. I think that's why sometimes you have certain thoughts when certain people come into your in your life, or when relationships are going a certain way, or when work isn't going as planned, or you make certain mistakes. I think it's being very mindful of this. And so, okay, I know I can ramble. All right, so today I'm going to go over eight different cognitive distortions, faulty thinking patterns. There's a lot more out there, and I will also post a link to an attachment that has a few more that I'm not going to go over today, but I'm going to go over them, those 8, and then I will have a follow-up video that will help in just how you manage the faulty thinking patterns that you have. So tune in. And yeah. The first faulty thinking pattern I have for you is something called mental filtering. Not sure if you've heard it, but it's a tendency to filter out the positive situations while focusing on those little negative things that have occurred. And as you continue to do this more, the more your world can seem negative, nothing to really enjoy, because you're always focusing on those negative things, whether it's a presentation, maybe you jumbled up your words a little bit, but overall the presentation went really well. But you're not focusing on that. You're focusing on what you did, that mistake that happened that maybe people didn't catch. Also, it could also be something where, let's say, your partner and you are having a conversation, and your partner pays you the best compliment ever, but also just kind of is giving feedback, because that's what relationships do. And that really in that conversation, your partner is like, you know what, all of these things are really great, but one thing that I feel like, we both, need to work on, and something I feel like, at times, you can kind of, work through is, how you communicate, when you're upset about something. So you take away from that whole conversation that you don't know how to communicate, that your partner is just, coming down on you, but you forget every positive thing that he did. So it really is just, like I said, filtering out the positives, and really focusing on those small negative things. And that's not a good look. It doesn't help, because at the end of the day, when you start to do that often, you kind of continue to look for more negatives than positives. Number 2 is magnification. So had to do the arm motion. So you exaggerate the significance of an experience, such as a mistake you made, maybe a problem that occurred. This is sometimes called binocular trick or catastrophizing. This could be anything, whether it was an email that you sent out and maybe you misspelled something and you are freaking out. Along with magnification is something also called minimization. That is number 3. Basically, you try to put up this facade wall that things don't really bother you, but they actually do. And this is a way where you may minimize a significant moment, maybe a job, that you wanted, and maybe you weren't called back, or maybe you did get an interview and maybe, you didn't make the cut. And so from there, it's kind of like, oh, it wasn't a big deal, but it actually was. So I think it's minimizing things that were important to you. Yes, fortune telling, it really is a way that you jump to conclusions. It's really thinking that you already know how a situation will go. You already know, like, with the things that are coming your way, you already know how this person is going to respond to you. So you just have that fortune telling, skill that none of us have. And that right there creates a lot of anxiety, because if you haven't already, if you're not already in the situation and you're not experiencing what's happening in the moment, but I guess before it happens, you're already going in your head, really kind of planning out how things will be done. your anxiety is not your friend in that moment. All right, so number 5 is something called all or nothing thinking. Also, it could be called black or white thinking. You basically think of things in two extremes. Either it's this way or that way. There's no in between. And so with that, you're not able to really see things from a different perspective. It's either this situation was horrible, and whenever I encounter this situation, it's always going to be horrible, or I'm always going to be single because of, this experience. So I just need to prepare for that. So instead of just being like, you know what, certain situations happen, and they're not ideal, but it doesn't mean that you have to think in those extremes. It's okay to come into the middle. It's okay to be like, you know what, this situation did happen, but it doesn't define who I am, or it doesn't define future situations. Number 6 is something called personalization or blame. It's a way that you hold yourself personally responsible for a situation that you didn't have any control over. Maybe it was something that happened to a family member, a close friend, but you're taking, whatever that situation that happened personally, and you're putting blame on yourself. And I think with this, there is guilt that can be associated with this. So number 7, we're almost there, is should statements. All right, so I have gone over should statements before in a few of my past videos, but it really is a way that you kind of put yourself and, certain behaviors and how you see your world, you put people in a box of, I feel like they should do this. It's basically the expectations that you place on others. And what happens when you place certain expectations on others and you get disappointed? That's where a lot of other things happen, of just getting frustrated. I think when you start to put should statements out there on others and how you want things to be done, you start to feel a little bit of frustration when things don't go your way. I think also with should statements, instead of being able to communicate that, hey, like, I would like for this to happen, or using I statements like I've mentioned before in past videos, I think you have this thought of, this is what should happen all the time, and this person should know how I feel. And so what happens with all of that? I don't know why I put my hand there, but what happens with that? You don't communicate. And so with no communication, that other person doesn't know if what they're doing is accurate, if what they're doing is okay, because you have this expectation that they should know, and we can't do that. And so with should statements, it's just, it really can lead to a lot of anger and frustration in how you, because of how you see the world and others. And it's about being able to not have these certain expectations on people, and being able to communicate certain things effectively instead of feeling like others can read your mind. Number 8 is something that was mentioned, but I also wanted to label it. So it's discounting the positives in any scenario. And I think it kind of goes with the whole mental filter. You take out all the positives, you only focus on that negative thing, and you just let that, sit. But disqualifying the positives, you basically aren't able to see those positive experiences. Like if something happened that was really good, oh, maybe that just happened one time, it's not going to happen again. Or if you did a really great job at something, acknowledge that, take it in, because it will happen again. I think when you disqualify the positives, you disqualify the things that could be helpful in how you manage, your self-esteem, your motivation, the kind words that you give yourself. So when those positive experiences do happen, don't disqualify them. take them in, take in those compliments. Okay, so that was number 8. Those are the 8 faulty thinking patterns for you. Like I said, I will put the rest, I'll add a PDF below. If you found this information helpful, please like it. I would really appreciate it. But please also look out for the next video, which will be a few tips on ways that you can manage the faulty thinking patterns that you have. All right. See you later. Bye.